Mr. and Mrs. Smith, episode 3.
It gets very spy-y.
It does get very spy-y.
It feels like a spy show now.
I'm enjoying it. I'm officially at the point with Mr. and Mrs. Smith where I'm like bought into the show.
Yeah.
I like first thing that stood out to me from episode 3 was these two are like hot and heavy with each other all of a sudden. Like they both got like super clingy with each other like right away.
It's weird. The company, whoever they are, I feel like their goal was just to get like psychologically ruined people and put them into a room.
Yeah.
Actually, I made a joke. It was a conspiracy theory that I said, and I think that the show or the company is just an elaborate way for the company to see if they can get two like weird people to fall in love. It's really not about their needs as a company. They're really just doing experiments to see if they can get weird people to fall in love with each other.
It was definitely funny. We got our like ski resort vibe, which was cool.
Yeah.
I did think the depiction of Donald Glover as bad at skiing doesn't properly show what a bad skier really looks like,
right.
Which is like they actually just can't do anything.
No,
like forget going downhill. Like you just can't do anything when you're bad at skiing.
Dude,
you just fall.
when they were on the lift going up, and when she didn't know that he was a bad skier yet, that's when I let the reins go. I was like, no, if this was real life, the man would have fallen twice in the ski line.
Yeah, just getting into the lift.
And he would have looked like a baby deer that was born 3 minutes ago, trying to walk around, you know? So that's when I let the reins go, and I was just like, okay, like stop being analytical, just enjoy the show and just sit back and relax. And when I did that, I started enjoying the show a lot more. And that's definitely how I'm gonna like approach the show in the future. And like I was thinking back on that too, because I felt myself do that, right? And I was like, yeah, of course there's a body decomposing in the composter on the roof of their house, and it's not a big deal right now. They also just blew up a house in like some quiet neighborhood and nobody's looking for them, right?
And there's been no like security footage that's identified their faces as like the people
they're literally gallivanting around just wreaking havoc, and it hasn't been a big deal. And they just show up to their house like it's not a big deal. So it's just like, okay, we just need to let it go.
Yeah, we need to accept it for what it is, which is an entertainment product.
Gunfight at the top of the ski lift and no one batted an eye.
Yeah,
you know?
Dude. Well, and that was what I was going to bring up, because like I remember sitting there thinking like, whoa, this first episode's weird because they drop off this package and it blows up a few seconds after they drop it off. Like they're alive still, but they're like still willing to work for these people, even though they just basically put their lives at risk. Then in the second episode, they like straight up murder the target when they weren't supposed to. That was like it wasn't like one casualty. It was like the target was the casualty. And then in the third episode, like literally there's clearly something going on between these two married people. The woman apparently is the big shot businesswoman.
Right.
She's super rich. He's like kind of the disgruntled husband. But like they bug their two phones, they do all this stuff, but then suddenly like she gets kidnapped.
Yeah.
And when she gets kidnapped, Donald Glover's character just goes crazy and starts shooting the place up. And what I think is fascinating about that is like in theory, this company would be aware of like a hit or an abduction of this like woman, and like they stop the abduction and then they just basically report the mission is complete. And it's like, and you're like, hold on a
what
second. Is there no fallout from this? Like,
I know.
Like he just survived the gunfight and it's like, we're all good now.
There's like 8 bodies at the top of this ski lift that is bleeding out. Right. It was absolutely wild. And I loved it. It felt so much like an old spy movie, right? Snowmobiles, skiing, gunfights, poison drinks, bugging phones. Like it was all just perfect. Like, and I love spy genre. Like, it's one of my favorites.
I'm really enjoying it too. I will say like you mentioned, there's a certain unseriousness to it. We did finally get to see like some real John Wick shit, in the sense that like Donald Glover's character, he goes freaking crazy in that scene, killing people.
And what's cool too, you gotta love a snow camo villain holding an Uzi, right? Like that's classic spy stuff. That's cool. And then he walks up to him and shoots him in the back, and then you see like a little spot of blood show up on the front of his white jacket, and then he just drops to the ground. And then he's doing like the shush sign to the lady
chick,
as she's like sitting, and he just goes around and just wrecks everybody, right?
What did you make of the? I thought it was kind of funny because again, I do think this show is like 40% comedy, 40% relationship drama, and then 20% like spy action scenes. And like the scene where like, because remember the dude gets like threatened to basically like give up your 51% of ownership or I'm gonna kill your wife, and the dude's like, no,
no deal.
And then they get this argument at the end, and the girl's like, you would give it up for me, blah, blah, blah. And then like he basically like goes on this rant about how like him like almost losing her but not giving up the money was like what helped him realize that he loved her,
right?
And that he didn't want a divorce, and then, like all this other stuff. And you're like, okay, bro.
You know what though? Like, so here's what I liked about it is they've done just a little bit of effort into adding just like some wholesome moments just randomly into the show, and that was one of them because you're watching that scene and you're like, okay, like, you know, the couple gets broken up and their lives are still train wrecks and nothing good came out of this for them, but then like something did and you're like, oh, it's kind of fun, like that's kind of cool. So like, yes, it was totally cheesy and I totally agree with you, but I liked it. Yeah,
I interpreted it as like a almost like a crisis that brought them closer,
which
so to
happens.
Speak. Which happens. It's a thing.
It happens. Like, I mean, would I be pissed if my wife was like, "Nah, it's okay. I'll save whatever's in our bank account. you can have my husband." But apparently, they've talked about this. Like, did you catch on?
Oh
that part?
yeah. They were like, we had talked about this scenario, and she's like, "But that doesn't mean you were supposed to actually do it or whatever." You're like, okay, well, that kind of defeats the purpose. But like, clearly, she was under the impression that kidnapping was a possibility.
Right. So like, what is she doing?
Mm-hmm.
Which apparently, you know, for the company to even be interested in them and the phone conversation is odd too.
Mm-hmm.
So like they must be trying to use that dirt apparently against them. I don't know. The thing that I thought was really interesting is the bugging of the phone. Like when you think of like a bug, you think of old school spy movies when you have a little like microphone and you stick it, you know, somewhere like the vent of a hotel room and then you listen in on conversations. And then when he had that card and he slipped it underneath the phone and like did like the little beep thing and it was like, you know, to signify that the phone was bugged, and then that was it. At first I was like, that makes absolutely no sense, and then I was like, yes, it does.
It's a virus.
It makes total sense. Yeah.
I thought of it as like an RFID transfer, like some sort of thing that basically convinces the phone to send like a separate like recording of all of its audio somewhere.
There's no reason to think that couldn't be a thing, and I thought it was a really slick way, you know, to modernize an old school idea of like bugging something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, and the other thing too is like, even if that technology doesn't exist, it's well within the grounds of the reality that this show is willing to operate under.
Yeah.
which is like, okay, he did just shoot up a bunch of people on a ski lift, so maybe we don't get hyper focused on whether or not the bugging was of realistic tech.
No, I agree. I agree on that. Dude, here's a story. So these kids at my high school actually they used like a card that they put into the teacher's. This is real. They put into the teacher's computer. And then it was like a password finder. So essentially they could go back and then like pull it out and like key in on like the password that the teacher was using.
Wow.
They went in and changed their grades and they got caught because they were dumbasses and changed like all their grades to like 100%.
Yeah.
Dude, isn't that wild? But that was like, wow, that's
smart enough to hack it and change grades, but not smart enough to like pick some random arbitrary numbers.
Yeah.
Like,
isn't that wild?
Oh man.
But I was like,
really
that's some spy stuff right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool.
Where are high school kids coming up with this tech?
Dude, that was back when we were in high school too.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy.
Like
we're talking like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nuts. Did you have anything else from this episode?
The farting was kind of funny.
Oh yeah, the fart scene was
just
funny.
Like if you're in a relationship long enough with someone, you're gonna fart around them.
No,
like,
and that's what like, blew my mind. It's like they're madly in love with each other, but they haven't even made it to the fart around each other phase. Like,
well,
come
dude,
on,
they've known each other for like 4 days.
Like, this is
So, but yeah, I thought that was funny because like the whole entire like wake up in a panic because one of them farted, and then Donald Glover's character is acting like he's like checking the room, like sweeping the room. Like, oh, there's a noise, and it was actually a fart. And then I thought it was funny that she was gonna play it off and be like, I'm going to go grab a snack. And then he's like, hey, if you want to fart, you can just fart.
I thought it was funny that after the fart too, they both went like super spy clear the room mode. That was like immediately, like they both just like went into it.
I just thought, again, it was like an interesting take on like modern spy movie. I thought it was cool.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that is all we have for today. As always, we sincerely appreciate you for supporting the show. We didn't have any specific other additional things that we need to hit.
No, there was a couple questions like mailbag topics, which we can hit right now or we can do at another time.
Favorite Star Wars video game is from Wesley Hastings. By the way, Wesley, thank you for supporting the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
My favorite Star Wars video game as a kid was Jedi Outcast. Shout out to San and Tavion, the two Sith Lords in that game. It was like the first like decent graphics, decent combat, like lightsaber third person kind of like action game. Really good storyline. Loved the final scene when Kyle Katarn's like angry chasing after Desan. Played that game a lot. There was a cheat code you could put in for lightsaber dismemberment. That was awesome. Also had a great...
That was influential in your life because you've talked about that before.
There also is an online multiplayer with Jedi Outcast that was excellent, where like you could like lightsaber battle against each other, and they would like take away all force powers. And so it was just like hack and slash, but like you could time it right with certain. It used to be that you'd always use the high power, basically to Gemso, like strikes, and you'd like start the swing and then run in, and as it was like hitting the person, then you'd run away, and then you kind of like go like this. And I actually got decent at it at one point in time. It was funny, but yeah, shout out Jedi Outcast. As of all time, though, I really enjoyed the Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor games because they were basically just like the modern technology. And
that's my pick too.
I really enjoyed Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor's combat. The parry counter kind of concept, and then force powers without being like obscenely powerful.
Yeah,
that all I thought was really enjoyable.
I'd agree. I'm not a huge video game guy, and I never have been, but I agree on Jason's take on that.
I'm in a sports data analysis club, and we are tasked with coming up with our own prompt. For example, some kind of question to be answered via data, and was wondering if you had any ideas to break off from. That's really interesting. So it would be so essentially, I guess I'm interpreting this question, Wesley, as a question about basketball or some sport that could be purely answered by data rather than a combination of eye test and data or visual approach. Is that the way you're interpreting
Read
that?
it one more time? Sorry.
You're good. I'm in a sports data analysis club, and we're tasked with coming up with our own prompt. For example, some kind of question to be answered via data. And was wondering if you had any ideas to break off from. Love the show. That's a really good question. I'll tell you what, Wesley, let me think about that one, and maybe we'll get back to you. Just because I don't want to have like 30 seconds of dead air while we just sit here and think.
No, I agree. I think there's different layers to that, right? Like you can get really, really in depth with some of these questions, or it can be like relatively basic, right? A super basic one could be like identifying the correlation between like height and free throw percentage, like the one entire like
just because they're closer to the rim.
No. Because a lot of times, big guys are bad free throw shooters. See if there's a true correlation among like NBA or even college level to see if you can find a correlation between height and free throw percentage or not.
I think it would be more correlated between like wingspan and hand size. But I do agree in the sense that like it's the functional motion of the jump shot is in the hand in the arm. But like it's interesting because like Shaq used to always say he's a bad free throw shooter because he has giant hands, but Kawhi Leonard has massive hands and he's one of the best shooters ever.
Yeah.
So like that would be interesting to see. Another example would be like if you were to do a deep dive on, for instance, like defensive rating off of a missed 3-point shot versus defensive rating off of a made basket or a made free throw or a dead ball situation. Because like essentially missed 3-point shots tend to lead to long rebounds. Long rebounds tend to lead to scramble situations and transition opportunities. And generally speaking, they can lead to advantage situations for the offense.
For sure.
Going the other way.
Even by picking up a foul.
Yeah. Versus made baskets have a tendency to lead to more set defense situations. But that can be wrong sometimes because and this is kind of I think the problem behind the kind of foundational part of what Wesley's asking, which is like a question that can be answered by data, because I'm not sure that there is one. We'll have to find, because even in made basket situations, let's say that a player drives along the baseline, and as he's driving along the baseline, he makes a kick out pass to the right wing. And on the right wing, a shooter takes a 3-point shot while that driver is circling back out to the perimeter. Even if he misses the shot, your floor balance is pretty well set up to get back in transition.
Yeah.
Whereas one of the things I see a lot with the Lakers, for instance, is Anthony Davis will catch the ball on a roll and he'll make a layup, but he wants to try to draw a foul, so he'll fall over into the camera row.
Right.
And he'll make it, and they're grabbing the ball out of the net and running the other way with a 5-on-4 because AD's on the ground. And so even a made basket doesn't necessarily amount to a set defense. And so that would be, maybe it'd be more of a question of versus free throws. So it'd be really interesting to see dead ball situations in free throws, the defensive rating league wide versus defensive rating off of missed 3-point shots. I think that'd be a really interesting example of floor balance.
Well, and that's super powerful if you're a coach, right? And if you can motivate your players and if they listen to you well, because if you could give your players a heads up, hey, we're awful on defense after free throws, or we're awful on defense after a missed 3-pointer.
We have to do a better job of sprinting back.
Yeah, because guess what happens? As soon as your point guard jacks up a 3-pointer, everyone's thinking, let's get back. Or if they're not crashing, of course. Or, hey, even if we are crashing, then we need to get back. And it's a mindset, which how powerful are mindsets in basketball? Yeah, that's an interesting question.
No, it is. It is really interesting. Again, Wesley, if you could provide us a little bit more clarification on the question if we're not answering it correctly. We had another person present us with a personality test. Luke has done it. I have not. So at some point in the future when I've done it, we can have a chat about it. But I think that's it for today.
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right, guys, that is all we have. As always, we appreciate you. We'll see you in about a week for another episode of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, as well as some Bad Batch. We'll see you guys then.
Thanks a lot.